He was just a tired single dad, holding his son's small hand, waiting for their food in a crowded diner. But when 6 men in torn military uniforms stopped in front of his table and one of them said, "Sir, may we?" He froze. He didn't know their faces, but their eyes carried stories of sacrifice. In that moment, his life was about to change forever. It was a cold autumn evening. Michael, a single father in his mid-30s, sat in a roadside diner with his 8-year-old son, Ethan. Life hadn't been kind to him, bills piled up, long shifts at the factory drained his strength, and raising Ethan alone after his wife passed away left him constantly walking the line between exhaustion and hope. But no matter how tight things got, he promised himself one thing: Ethan would never feel unloved. That night, Ethan was smiling ear to ear over a simple burger and fries, a rare treat since most nights were spent on homemade soup and leftovers. Michael found comfort just watching his boy's joy, until the door of the diner swung open. 6 men walked in. Their uniforms were faded, some torn at the sleeves, with boots that had seen battles no ordinary man could imagine. They didn't walk with arrogance, they walked with weight. Scars, both visible and hidden, seemed to cover their bodies. The chatter in the diner dimmed as people glanced, some with respect, others with unease. The men looked around for a table, but every seat was taken. That's when the oldest of them, with gray in his beard and a limp in his leg, stopped at Michael's table. His voice was deep, steady, but carried a humility that pierced Michael's heart. "Sir, may we?" Michael froze. His first thought wasn't about his half-eaten dinner or the crowded diner. His mind raced back to his father, who had once been a soldier but never came back from war. His throat tightened. He looked at Ethan, who was staring wide-eyed at the uniforms. Without thinking twice, Michael stood up. "Please, sit. You're welcome here." He pulled Ethan close and shifted their plates to make room. The soldiers nodded, their gratitude silent but heavy. As they sat, Michael noticed one of them had bandages peeking from beneath his sleeve, another's hands trembled as he tried to grip his glass of water. These weren't just soldiers, they were survivors. Ethan leaned toward Michael and whispered, "Dad, they look like heroes." Michael smiled faintly, but inside, he knew heroes often carried wounds the world never sees. That simple decision, giving up their table, would set off a chain of events that Michael never expected. As the soldiers ate quietly, Michael overheard fragments of their conversation. Words like mission, brothers lost, and starting over floated across the table. Each sentence felt like a puzzle piece from a life he couldn't imagine but respected deeply. One of the younger soldiers, barely older than Michael himself, noticed Michael hadn't touched his plate. "You didn't have to give this up for us," he said softly. "We're used to standing." Michael shook his head. "No man who's worn that uniform should ever be left standing. Not in my presence." Silence followed, not empty silence, but heavy with unspoken respect. For the first time that night, the soldiers smiled. But as Michael reached for the bill later, the waitress stopped him. "Sir, it's already been taken care of." Confused, Michael glanced back at the soldiers' table. The oldest one nodded gently, his eyes moist. "We've been given meals, handshakes, and salutes before, but not many people give up their seat for us. That's worth more than money." Michael swallowed hard. "It's just a table." "No," the soldier replied, "it's dignity. It reminds us we're still seen. Still valued." Ethan tugged at Michael's sleeve. "Dad, can we do more for them?" Michael's eyes filled. His little boy's heart was bigger than he realized. That night, they sat together with the soldiers, hearing stories of bravery, of brothers who never made it home, and of the battles they still fought every day, not on fields, but in their minds and hearts. When the soldiers finally stood to leave, they saluted Michael, not as a civilian, but as a man who carried respect and honor in the smallest of gestures. Ethan saluted back, his little hand shaky but proud. Michael watched them walk away into the night, knowing he'd never forget the sound of those words, "Sir, may we?" They had come to him hungry and tired. But they left him, and his son, with something priceless, a lesson that true strength isn't in uniforms or medals. It's in humanity. In kindness. In giving, even when you don't have much to give. Sometimes, the smallest actions, a seat, a smile, a moment of respect, can heal wounds we don't even see. Heroes aren't always the ones who fight wars. Sometimes, they're single dads. Sometimes, they're little boys with big hearts. And sometimes, they're you.